Welcome to Michigan Sports Media Network. Today I have our lead Tigers reporter, Brad Thompson, with us, and our lead Red Wings reporter, James Gullett, as well. And we will start off with some Tigers news. Brad Thompson, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good day for the Tigers on national TV, ESPN. They played a little long ball today, back to back to back. Very interesting. The guy that I'm going to keep touting here, Jahmai Jones, lead off in center field, hit a grand poobah today. Then next, Andy Ibanez, first pitch gone. Next, Gleyber, Torres gone. So I think, really, to be honest with you, I think you saw what that lineup's going to look like. Granted, with Vierling and Meadows is out, I think you saw what this lineup's going to look like against left-handed hitters once they head north. Some things could change again early. Reese Olson, very, very encouraging. Struck out the side in the first inning, gave up a hit, had two more clean innings. Fastball was 95 to 97. Curveball was crisp today. What he gets in trouble with is he tends to come hang his curveball, and then he also tends to come right down the heart of the plate. That's like when he got touched up for that grand slam in Cleveland at the last playoff game. And he's given up, he's given up some long balls. So, but very encouraging. Something else, like I said, Jahmai Jones, AJ Hinch said, you know what, we're going to give him an opportunity. He told Jahmai, he said, listen, we're going to put you in the outfield. We're going to see what you can do. This is the best spot to make the club. And so far, he's been raking pretty good. He hit over 300 in his stint with the Yankees and in AAA off of left-handed pitchers. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on there. Yesterday, Kenta Maeda, 3 strong innings. AJ was very encouraged about that. So I would want to say that Kenta is definitely back in the mix for the fifth slot. I did misspeak. I forgot to mention Reese Olson, our last podcast. He is our number 3 starter. Then you have Jackson Jobe at 4, and then you have the mix of Manning, Maeda, and Herter. So there's what you're looking at for your rotation. But yeah, very encouraging. I mean, when you beat, the home runs weren't off of some guy that's going to be, working at Foot Locker in a month. This was off of Jesus Luzardo. And, this guy led the league in strikeouts in 22 and 23, and he's the top 3 in Philly's rotation. And a lot of people have Philly, projected to go to the World Series this year. So very, very encouraging day, very encouraging last couple of days. I think when we get to crosstalk and things like that, the panel, we can talk about more of the Tigers outfield scenarios and situations. But other than that, lastly, I think I should include that Gleyber Torres, he came over, he had a falling out with the Yankees. And this guy was an all-star again. But the media and even the Yankees, Aaron Boone, to a certain extent, were saying, he was a little obstinate to wanting to make adjustments to certain things. And AJ Hinch is this coming. He didn't come out and dispute what the Yankee brethren was saying, but he's saying right now that he threw some shade at it. He said, Gleyber's come in here. He's been a big part of what we're trying to do, and he's really buying into our system. So that's definitely good to hear. We don't know what's going to go on with Torres. If things go south, he would definitely he's a 1-year guy right now. He would definitely be somebody who could bring some prospects back in. Do we want to sign him long-term if everything goes great when we do have Aiyuk Lee out there? It's going to be interesting. So they've got some nice options with Torres, but I like this signing. I think you'll see him hitting the 3-hole, and I think with Riley Green protecting him, he's going to do some damage. So that's what I got on the notes there.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad, for the information. James, do you have anything on that?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
All right. Well, then we will go ahead and pass it right back to you for our Red Wings report.
Awesome. I will start with a simple, hey, Hockey Town. And sorry about the slow start, but I figured that I would start my coverage with the same intensity that the Red Wings brought to the ice, which was pretty much none. So Yeah, there you have it. They fell 2-1 to the Carolina Hurricanes, who were 3-6 their last 9 games. And to put it bluntly, they just got outplayed. There was no controversial calls this time. There was no really fluky goals. They just got outplayed. They got outshot. Carolina had more block shots. Carolina won more faceoffs. We just flat got outplayed by a team that was on quite a bit of a cold streak. So I was hoping that with the controversy that ended the Blue Jackets game and the outdoor game at the Shoe at Ohio State Stadium, they would rally and use that to motivate them and kind of come out of the gates like a bat out of hell. And I kind of feel like they just barely came out at all. Um, they had opportunity. They fell down 2-0. They finally scored to make it 2-1. They had multiple power plays. They've had 2.5 minutes at the end of the game with an empty net after they pulled Lyon for the extra skater. 2.5 minutes of 6-on-5, and they just could not find the back of the net. Overall, they looked. Sorry. Overall, they kind of just looked slow, lethargic. I was hoping for a lot more energy, not only after, like I said, the big game moment, but after the All-Star break. I know some players like Larkin and Raymond played in the Four Nations tournament. During that tournament, you almost unanimously, all the announcers were saying how playing with different players and playing for your nation might rejuvenate people. And obviously, the players, unlike most sports, actually truly cared about this kind of all-star-esque game situation, and they were trying their ass off, and they were talking to each other on the bench, sharing tips, and I expected a little bit more finesse and maybe a couple new moves, and yeah, they just came out slow. Towards the end of the game, the only thing even remotely controversial was Stahl, the captain of the Carolina Hurricanes, somewhat, and you could tell on the video it was accidentally, but somewhat elbowed Lucas Raymond, one of our star players, in the head. And the Wings had more fight in the scuffle trying to defend their player than they did the whole 60 minutes of hockey. So I wanted to know kind of where that energy was during the game because it just wasn't there. I'm hoping with Friday being the trade deadline that we will make a move and one of more significance than the move they made today, which will segue me into a massive, massive trade amongst the league. The Wings are barely involved, but are involved. The Tampa Bay Lightning will get Yanni Goodridge, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and a 2026 fifth-round pick. The Seattle Kraken will get Michael Yzerman, a 25 second-round pick, a 26 first-round pick, and a 27 first-round pick, making that a total of 2 firsts, a second, and a player. And the Wings' involvement in this trade is they take on 25% of uh, Goulard's remaining cap space, which is 1.29 million, to make Tampa Bay be able to fit under the cap. And for taking on some of that cap space, we are awarded a 2025 fourth round pick. So basically, we just gave up some cap space to buy a fourth round pick. His contract is up at the end of the year, so at the end of the year, all of that money falls off. It's not something that's going to be lingering on our books for very long. But in a trade that involves multiple players, multiple first round picks, multiple, one second round pick, correction, we get a fourth and we don't get a player. We don't help our team today. In hockey, it's not like football where these draft picks are instant impact players. They sit in the minors for several years. I made a joke on Twitter that we might see whoever we draft with this pick in 2030. So hopefully we can, look forward to that a little bit. But in a trade deadline that actually has first round picks, if we wanted to do the rebuild route, if we wanted to get rid of contracts that are going to end at the end of the year, if we wanted to take on a bad contract but gain a first round pick, just something to help this team. At this point, I mean, the deadline's not till Friday, but at this point, we just use up a little bit of cap space for a future fourth. And, I mean, in terms of the trade, that's all that we have done so far. In other roster news, it has not been officially worded. However, multiple reporters, including the official reporter for the Detroit Free Press, mentions Michael Rasmussen should be back for our next game. He has missed the last 3 games in which we have gone 0-3. He is a solid player who I don't think gets the credit he deserves. He doesn't put up a lot of stats. He's not the flashiest player. He just kind of gets the job done. And in totality, the stat that matters most is winning. In games that he has played in since we drafted him in 2017, he made his debut in 2018. Games he played in, we are 158 and 160, only 2 games under 500. For reference, in games that he's missed via injury or we sent him back down because he was up and down and he was a prospect, the Wings are 48 and 90. So we're 2 games under 500 when he's in the lineup, and we are 42 games under 500 without him, including 0-3 the last 3. So he should be in the lineup by all reports. That hopefully will give us a spark because, like I said, he's not a big goal scorer. He doesn't have his name up in lights. If you go to a game, I doubt you see his jersey in the crowd. But maybe there's something to that, and maybe that should be fixed here in the future. In addition to that, we called up Carter Mazur, who is a rookie. This is going to be his absolute NHL debut. We drafted him 70th overall in 2021. He has never played an NHL game, and he was born in Jackson, Michigan. So, like Dylan Larkin, he actually is a Michigan guy who is playing for his hometown team. And I always love those kind of stories, in addition to, or I should say, especially when they've earned it. It's not, hey, this guy's from Michigan, let's give him a shot. He's a very talented prospect. I was kind of shocked with the playoff expanded rosters that we did not call him up towards the end of the season to get his feet wet a little bit. But he's here now, so it is what it is. And there's going to be a lot of excitement in the air to at least watch his debut. And with between him and Rasmussen coming back, maybe that will finally give the Wings a little jolt of energy. And then lastly, to make room for Rasmussen on the roster, the Red Wings have waived forward Christian Fischer, which he is eligible upon clearing waivers to go to Grand Rapids in our minor league system. But in my personal opinion, I would have probably put someone else there. Fischer is another guy, in my opinion, quite like Rasmussen, where he doesn't light up the scoreboard. He's not going to wow you if you just look at box scores. But if you turn the game on, he's the one digging pucks out of the corner. He's the one being physical. He's the one giving that, like Aiden Hutchinson, nonstop motor action. So I am a little bummed about that, but business is business, and I will say his numbers don't look the best, so I somewhat understand the call. I do not hear you.
Can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks, James, for the information. One thing I will say on the trade front, I feel like this is a move that Red Wings made, 3-4 years ago. But it seems like in the last 2 years, we've been kind of making moves to win. And this is just kind of a confusing one for an outsider who's not a huge Red Wings fan. I mean, I've watched a couple games this year. But just in general, it seems kind of like I mean, it's not a bad move, don't get me wrong, but it feels like a step back, metaphorically, I guess, in that way. And then the other thing, which you mentioned about Rasmussen, is I think those guys matter a lot more in hockey than other sports, right? Those like grinders, those hustle guys, they add more because hockey, like you're only, let's say on average, I don't know what the real average is, but let's say you're scoring 3 goals a night. That means you're gonna have 3 goals scored and a couple assists. If you're a guy that makes the impact outside of the scoreboard, I think that matters more in hockey than it would in a basketball or a football specifically, because guys are kind of doing everything. But with that said, Brad, the floor is yours.
They were flat last night. I think McClellan is gonna hold them to standards. I mean, you do that in the course of 82 games. I get that. But I get a little salty here, but that trade, I mean, is just like, okay, Tampa, Seattle, why don't you just, run a train on us right now? We're just here for gratification. What the fuck is that? All right. This is it, man. If they do this, we're gonna have a low profile here at the deadline. I'm out. I'm sorry. I know I was talking. I'm out. This team is stale. This team is stagnant. This team needs a major shakeup. Uh, Outside of Raymond and Cider, you want to do something big, Stevie, you see what you can get for Larkin. All right. And I know that's blasphemous, and I know everybody who's watching this on Twitter, I'm going to have to, get or block or just weird, but something's got to happen. Maybe Larkin is a little bit over the top, but it's crazy. You've got to do something that's going to, make a dent, something that's going to register, because right now this team is not going. They're not. If they stay status quo and they make a little tinker, they're not going to make the playoffs. And I got news for them: the way the Tigers and Lions and Pistons are playing, they're going to end up being the Detroit Pistons all the way up to this year. They are going to become irrelevant. This is not, as far as much as this is Hockey Town, it's not if you're not winning. They will be an afterthought. So shake something up. Even if you shake it up and it does not work, I think the fans are still going to say, hey, we tried. But if you go into after the trading deadline with this roster and you're out, all bets are off with me. So,
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Brad. With that being said, James, do you have anything to add?
Not necessarily add, but one thing I had in my prep that I wanted to get out there before the trade happened, and I had to try to learn all these guys' names that I've never seen before because they haven't played on my team. Um, with the loss last night, I mean, the season's not over, but we did fall out of the playoff spot. So if the playoffs were today, we are not in. So we are on the cusp. There are, I believe, 7 teams within 4 points of each other fighting for 2 spots. It kind of reminds me of uh, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Minnesota for football battling for that number 1 seed. It's like we win, but everyone else wins, so we don't gain any ground. There are 7 teams just back and forth, and coming out 0-3 from the break, and just not even looking good too. It's not like we're losing these tight games or, you know, we got beat fair and square soundly. I don't think there was a point in the game last night that Carolina was even worried about us. And if we don't get our heads out of our backside soon, this season might be gone.
yeah, it's guys, if they don't make the playoffs. Make the playoffs or shake it up. Shake it up, don't make the playoffs, you tried. Don't shake it up, don't make the playoffs. You're on your own.
Yeah, I
You just
totally get that. And that's a good point. But with that being said, we're going to pivot now to the Pistons for more of a positive Detroit sports note.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the Pistons are good again, folks. I am excited. The whole city of Detroit is excited about it. It really seems like similar to that resurgence the Lions had. It's a bit different way because Brad Holmes had to take his lumps the first few years, even after, drafting well and doing all that. It's a bit harder, in my opinion, to build a football team than it is a basketball team, just for the number of players you need, really. But Langdon came in. He didn't make any, splash moves. He didn't come in and trade for Brandon Ingram or sign, the biggest guy. our biggest name guy, but what he did was he added Tobias Harris, which I was not a big fan of. I'm still, lukewarm on it. I think he added what he needed to add, but for $25 million a year, I don't know if that's really worth it. But that's a conversation for another time. He's doing what he needs to do right now, and that's really all we can hope for at the end of the day. And then he obviously added, Malik Beasley for probably the best contract in the NBA right now, period.
Oh,
I don't really think it's close either. For 1 year, $6 million, he's averaging almost 20 a game, and he's leading the entire NBA in 3-pointers. So just from that standpoint, probably the best contract in the NBA. And then, he drafted Ron Holland, which, when you kind of look at those moves, it's like, but when you put them together and you add it to, and you know what? Stephen A. Smith got slammed for saying this the other day, but I'm going to say it here. Our last GM, for some reason, his name is slipping my mind.
Troy Weaver.
Troy Weaver,
Troy
yeah,
Weaver.
from OKC, actually, my number one team, but we won't tell them that. But Troy Weaver, he came and he drafted Cade Cunningham. He drafted Jalen Duren. He drafted Asar Thompson. He drafted Jaden Ivey. I mean, if you think about it that way, obviously he didn't have, the immediate impact we would have helped as a GM, and he really wasn't that great as a trader. I think we can kind of all agree on that. But what he did was he set a foundation that Langdon came in, said, okay, we need this, we need that, we need this, add it to this group, and now we are winning. So it's just great. It's great to see Detroit basketball, back at it again. Obviously, we were on a 8 game win streak, and then lost to, I believe it was the Nuggets who knocked us off that pedestal there. It's amazing right now. We're over 30 wins. I think we doubled last year's wins by January, like halfway through January, if I'm not mistaken, which isn't hard to do when you only win 14 games, but pretty cool to see. And then obviously, we have the resurgence, or not the resurgence, I should say, the surgence, or the coming of Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson right before our very eyes right now. And obviously, I've been a big fan of Jalen Duren's for a long time. A lot of people hated him up until this season, it seemed like. I've always really been a fan of his. Thompson on the same level. I think, and we'll talk about this in a second on the panel. I think Thompson has like Kawhi Leonard type of a peak. If he can get a jump shot, we're talking about like one of the best players in the league. And then, obviously Jaden Ivey is still injured, but the Pistons are 21-9 since January 1st without Jaden Ivey. Now, I personally am very excited to see him back. There's no real timetable yet on his return. Back in February, early February, people were saying most likely early to mid-March. Right now, it's sounding more like late March, which is smart. They shouldn't, risk, pushing him too far or too fast, I should say, because we're doing pretty good right now without him. And then last but not least, JB Bickerstaff is coach of the year. I mean, I don't really see, maybe the Cavs, they have a little bit of an argument, but I would say what Detroit has done, right, in terms of wins over expected, is way more than what Cleveland has done. And I think that kind of puts that into perspective. Obviously, the Cavs are killing it right now, but they're probably 10 wins, 15 wins ahead of where we thought they would be. And the Pistons are like doubling to tripling their win total of what we thought it would be. But with that being said, I will pass it over to James. If you have anything to add on that.
I was going to mention Bickerstaff as coach of the year, but you covered that pretty well. If we're using, and I know it is a different sport, but if we are using the criteria of wins above expected, which is pretty much the only reason Dan Campbell did not win coach of the year because the Lions were expected to win, that makes Bickerstaff, in my opinion, the runaway favorite as long as we are applying the same formula to each sport. And then, as you said, I am extremely excited to get Ivy back, but to echo your sentiment, there's no hurry. We are 12-3 the last 15 games, even with that Denver loss. Let the good times roll. Let him heal up. I don't want him back until he is fully healthy. because last I looked, I believe the Pistons have a 95% chance to make the playoffs. So let's bring Ivy back when he's ready and not forced. So that way we can have him at his top potential.
Yeah, and that's really good points you brought up there. Brad, anything to add there?
Well, yeah, I could be wrong, but I think Bickerstaff was coach of the year last year with Cleveland. I
I'm
could be,
not recalling. I can't remember,
yeah,
but
I believe he was, and he was let go, much like Dwayne Casey was. So I do find that interesting, but I think it's all he is coach of the year. But Detroit Weaver, he can hold his feet over the flames for Killian Hayes when you have a pick that high. And granted, he did leave Tyrese Halliburton on the board there. I When you hire Monty Williams and you keep going after him and going after him, and Williams just keeps saying no, 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 and then finally you throw so much damn money at him. And yes, granted, that's a little bit on Tom Gores too, at least 50-50, hell, maybe even a little bit more on Gores. But it's amazing what a coach can do. All right, and he identified Bickerstaff, and he got him. He picked up, and this is not an indictment on Weaver. I'm singing, throwing bouquets over Langdon right now. You signed Beasley, who was a steal. You signed Hardaway. You get Tobias Harris. You could bring those three in. It's not flashy, but look what it's doing. You've got some mentors there. I mean, Beasley is, if we don't re-sign him, I would be shocked. Right now, Cade is playing with Duren in a 1-2 game right now that is frankly off the charts. Their chemistry is it's amazing what they're doing right now. They are arguably outside of LeBron and Luka. They might be the best 1-2 punch going right now. So I really like that. And Asante Thompson, with Booker, being, all of a sudden disgruntled, and him and Budenholzer not vibing. Everybody says, "Oh, Pistons." He's from Muskegon. He loves the Detroit teams. I was on that bandwagon at first too now, but I'm saying to myself, this team is doing so damn well. You don't really want to rip it out too fast. You don't want to gut it, because Asir Thompson, James Wilkins, who's a highly regarded NBA gentleman, said, "I knew Kobe, and Kobe was one of a kind." He said, "But these Thompson twins," meeting Asir's brother, said, "I haven't seen anybody work harder at the game other than Kobe." And that's about as high praise as it gets. So you've got, I mean, if you go in with a core of Thompson, Duren, Cade, Beasley, because Tobias and Hardaway are getting a little long in the tooth, but then you also have Holland, you also have Sasser. You start getting it's going to be a destination. People are going to want to play with Cade now. Cade is box office. He is going to be second team All NBA just based on the fact that he's got to pay his dues. Should probably be first team. I think anybody would take second team All NBA at the start of the season. People are going to want to play with him. We do have a tradition. All right, so future is sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. Milwaukee can win a title in that town. Believe me, Detroit, we can win a title here again too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially with the Devin Booker stuff. Like, a lot of people have kind of been saying, give whatever it takes to get him. And I'm still on the camp of making a move for him would be a good idea. But I also agree with you that it's not worth blowing this thing up for. I personally think Asar Thompson's, untouchable right now. There's really not many people I would trade him for. I mean, obviously, the top 10 guys in the league, yeah. But other than that, it's kind of hard. Especially just because what we've seen from him offensively this year. If he can get that jump shot going, we're going to be on a much better path. But if we don't get Booker, we still need to make a move, right? And I think that there's potential that, a Kevin Durant move could happen. And I think it would take a lot less than Booker. I think if you gave, Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and maybe another young player not named Thompson or Duren or Holland, I think you might be able to get that done if you give him a first or two, because he's got a 1-year deal. He's getting into his the end of his prime, which who knows with LeBron playing like what he is at 40, if Kevin Durant will really drop off. But you're essentially getting a rental. And I think that a lot of teams look at Durant that way. And I think, there's a lot of teams that might give up more, but I think it would have to come with a contract extension. And obviously there's some other guys, as we go on. I've heard some LaMelo Ball is available talks, which I don't know if I'd really want to give up what it would take to get LaMelo to then kind of mess up the stuff with Cade. Because really with Cade, what we need is a secondary ball handler who can shoot off the catch. Like, genuinely, we don't need somebody like LaMelo who's going to come in and he's used to being the number one, or even a Booker. I think Booker would fit a little better just because he's played with KD for so long. But with that being said, I will pass it over to you, James, if you got anything to add.
The only thing I wanted to add, and I'm not trying to rain on any parades, I just like getting the facts right, is Bickerstaff unfortunately did not win Coach of the Year last year. That was Oklahoma City Thunder's coach that won it last year. But you're also probably just referring to our last two coaches, because Dwayne Casey in 2018 won Coach of the Year before we hired him, and then Monty Williams won Coach of the Year before we hired him. So we did hire two Coaches of the Year in a row, but we did not make it three. But
Gotcha.
so like you're right there. I just want to make sure that we had the facts on that. And then in terms of like Jay said, I would love to add, in theory, and if this was um, Xbox, I would love to add LiAngelo Ball to the roster, but that would shake way too much chemistry. You hit the nail on the head. He's the primary ball handler. When he's on the court, the offense runs through him, and we already got that in Cade. So we need to find, like you said, another shooter. Um, I would love Devin Booker. I don't know stylistically how much he and Cade would really vibe. They, of course, will make it work if it happens, but he's another guy who's from Michigan who wanted to be a Piston. I remember him working out pre-draft for the Pistons, saying how bad he wanted us to draft him, and we passed on him. So I would love to get him over here, but I just don't see us giving up enough to do it.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I feel personally, just to kind of add on to that, I feel personally Booker is exactly what we're looking for next to Cade, because he can be your primary guy when Cade's off the floor, ball handler, passer, scorer, but he can also be that Klay Thompson type where he can literally just stand at the elbow or in the corner. Cade can do his little dribble moves, pass that ball out, Booker smacks it, and then I just feel they would kind of work perfectly together, stylistically at least. But to both of your guys' point, um, it's going to take quite a bit, and I don't know if I'm willing to give that up. So moving on, we will be talking NFL and Detroit Lions. Obviously, we kind of covered the Lions for the most part on our Monday show, but there's some new stuff that's happened since then, and a lot of NFL movement. Obviously, we will hold off on the NFL movement until later, but just some things for Lions fans to keep in mind here. Okay, the Lions have, I believe, about $59 or $60 million in cap space this year after the cap went up. With Max Crosby's new deal, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, he got $35.5 million per year. I expect Hutch to want 36. That's just what it's going to be. And unfortunately for us, Crosby got his deal done first, so he set the market. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get this deal done before Myles Garrett's, because if Myles Garrett resets the market again, we might have to end up paying Hutch 40. And I love Hutch, I do, but man, that is a shit ton of money. I don't really care what position you play. But with that being said, we could free up about another 10 if we make these two cuts. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be thinking, oh, Zadarius Smith. No, we're not cutting Zadarius Smith. If you think we should cut Zadarius Smith, I want you to do me a favor. So go on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. Click that little circle with your face on it. Go down to settings and hit remove account because you shouldn't have a Twitter account if that's what you think. Just saying. He had 9 sacks last year, and yeah, he's old, but he's only $9 million. I mean, we cut him and we only save 5. What the hell are we doing that for? We're gonna go try to spend 5 on a guy just as good, and we're not gonna get it. So Zadarius Smith is not on this list. However, Graham Glasgow, if we cut him post June 1st, you add $5 million. And then Khalif Raymond as well. If we cut him, we save, I think it's 4.8 million. Yeah. And there's around 2 million in dead cap for both of them. Fine by me. You know, that dead cap gets spread over the years. It's not like it's a huge deal, but we could save 10 million right there and go sign a guy that I love, like Pat Jones, pass rusher from Minnesota, who had 7 sacks last year as a rotational guy. Or, you know, use that to sign a corner, which, speaking of corners, looks like Carlton Davis is gone. Based on his tweet, he said something like, basically, I know my worth. I won't make that mistake again. If you want a lockdown corner, come pay me my money. Yikes. Don't love that as a Lions fan. I really don't love it. And it's not because, you know, I don't like the fact that he wants to get paid. I just think that shows the Lions gave him a deal he did not enjoy. And we kind of saw the same from, you know, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson this past offseason, where he mentioned, you know, well, just felt like they didn't really want me and all this and that because they weren't willing to pay me what I thought I was worth. And that's fine. Think you're worth something, please go get that money. I hope Carlton Davis goes to like fucking Jacksonville and gets 25 million a year. Do it. Please. Please give him a 3-year for 75 mil or 80 mil, whatever it is. Enjoy that. I love you, Carlton. We ain't paying you that, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. Like you're gonna get 18 mil max from us, and that's because we want to win Super Bowls. And unfortunately for Carlton, he's not elite. He's just not. He's a very good corner, but he's not an elite corner. He's good in man. He's good in zone. He's good against the run, but that ain't 25 million a year. That's not, you know, quarterback money. But with that being said, there are some guys that I like, and you can go ahead and check out our article on this on misportsmedia.com that I wrote last month, where I listed probably 8 guys of each position that I thought was a position of need. But I really, really am a fan of Byron Murphy from Minnesota. He had a really good year last year. He's also got that height weight ratio that Brad Holmes just loves for some reason. I don't know what it is with his infatuation with 5'11", 190 corners, but that is like his bread and butter. And then also DJ Reed, who's another guy similar to Byron Murphy. Asante Samuel, who I think is going to be a dark horse candidate in this free agency class as a corner. He's still young. He had some injury issues, of course. But for the most part, he's been a pretty good player. He had a bit of a down year last year, but for, you know, 10 million a year or something along those lines, maybe even a little bit less, I think I'd be okay. Charvarius Ward, I think, is a player that is not getting talked about enough in this free agency class. He had a pretty bad year last year. He lost his daughter, guys. Like, it's something, you know, that happened to him that took him totally out of the game. And he even said it halfway through the season. He was like, I don't even know if I love football anymore. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And after the season ended, he said, you know, I just need to get out of California because that, you know, reminds me of what happened to her. So hopefully, you know, we could give him a 1-year deal, maybe 12 and a half, see what he does. He's 29, so obviously he's a little bit older, but he brings that, you know, number 1 corner pedigree over from what he did in San Francisco. And I don't expect him to have the same bad season he did last year in terms of play. And then the obvious one, Darius Slay. Okay. Darius Slay, I think, should be brought onto this team, but not as a corner 1. I could see him as a corner 3. I don't really love him as a corner 2 either, just because of his age. He was injured a little bit last year. He did play well. Don't get me wrong. He played pretty well last season, but I just don't feel confident bringing him on a team that has as ironic as what I'm about to say is, that's trying to win a Super Bowl. I just don't feel like he's going to be a starter level corner, at least a high level starter. You know, we're not putting him on Justin Jefferson, which hopefully Terrion Arnold is at that point right now. And maybe if Brad Holmes feels Terrion's a true number one, I could see bringing Slay in as a number two and then bringing another, middling free agent similar to what we did with Amik Robertson last year. And he's actually played pretty well for us too. So unfortunately, he did suffer that rough injury to his arm in the playoffs, and who knows if he'll be back at 100%. But that's just how it's going to be with this corner issue right now. Carlton Davis is probably the best one available, but there's some other guys we could get. Unfortunately, this draft class is pretty weak at the corner spot, so we're not going to be able to draft a starter. But one name I think a lot of people are not talking about is Ennis Rakestraw. I think that Brad might feel confident in Ennis as a starter next year and add Slay and not add another vet because he goes, worst case scenario, Ennis isn't ready. You got Slay ready to go, and Slay should be a decent guy. But again, it's kind of when you're going to win a Super Bowl, we don't want to have that if this guy's not good, maybe this guy will be. You really don't want that situation. So, and then let's see. Jonah Jackson is heading to Chicago after getting traded for a 6th-round pick. And another big move that they just made is they traded for Joe Thuney. And the reason I bring this up in the Lions portion right now is because I just feel like I would have never traded for that Jonah Jackson contract. The Joe Thuney deal is kind of a steal. I will say I'm a big fan of his, and he's probably got another 2 to 3 years of higher level pay or higher level play. And I don't love or hate what the Bears are doing right now. I kind of like the idea that they're spending, 40 plus million on 2 guards. I also don't love that they got him for what they got him for, pretty cheap. We'll kind of see how that goes. Ben Johnson obviously is trying to build that O-line the correct way, which, more power to him. But more on the free agency side of things for the Lions. There are a few good pass rushers available, but there's 3 I wanted to kind of bring up today to just kind of talk about a little bit. Khalil Mack, Chase Young, and Josh Sweat. I feel Khalil Mack's the obvious one that we want. I think Chase Young is he's going to get overpaid because he had a decent season last year as a rotational guy. I think he had 60 or 40 something pressures, something along those lines. Not many sacks, but he had a pretty okay year. And then Josh Sweat killed it in the Super Bowl, but never really was that elite production guy. He had 8 sacks in the regular season. So I personally don't want to put all our eggs in that basket of free agency. I don't think there's a guy outside of Khalil Mack that I would really just be like, look, how much do you want? Okay, we can make something work. The other 2 I'd lowball them, and if they don't take it, I just move on. But with that being said, James, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed emotions based on the Bears' moves today. For the simple fact, between Jonah Jackson and Thuney, they just got 2 Pro Bowl guards. Legitimate offensive linemen, and that was the one uh, catastrophic area of need for the Bears is their O-line. They have decent to at least average running backs. They have amazing receivers, and I really like Caleb Williams. I hate that he's a Bear, but if you give him time, he has the weapons. I like Cole Kmet a lot. I do feel like they're misusing him in Chicago, but he is a heck of a player. Um, I just, to me, this reiterates what I said on Monday, and I want the Lions to respond to this by going to get like a Myles Garrett. And I mean, I'm fine with Cleo Mack. I know he's a little long the tooth as well, but that's still doing something. I would like to go above that. Obviously, Cleo Mack will come far cheaper than Garrett via free agency instead of trade. So I got no issues whatsoever with Garrett. I'm sorry, with Cleo Mack. But a move like this, I want to kind of be like, okay, you did this. Now look at us. We did that. And I have an interesting stat here on Tony because I know a lot of people kind of don't know as many, especially interior offensive linemen. Like anyone around the NFL knows Penei Sewell. Like you don't have to be a Lions fan to know Penei Sewell. You don't have to be a 49ers fan to know Trent Williams. But I think the centers and guards around the league don't get as much hype and publicity as maybe they should. But Thuney used to play for the New England Patriots, and he was on the Patriots protecting Brady. In his 9 seasons, he has been to 6 Super Bowls between the Patriots and the Chiefs. So he has appeared in a Super Bowl on 66% of his seasons. And that is just completely unheard of. And he has made at least one start at all 5 offensive line positions. So, as much as I can't stand the fact the Bears got arguably a top 5 guard in the entire league for a late round, mid to late round pick, um, it borderline infuriates me. I would love Zeitler to come back, but until it's official, I would have given up that pick to get Tooney on the Lions. So as much as I'm not a fan of the Bears, and I hate the Bears more than Minnesota and Green Bay combined, this is a A+ move by them. And I know Jackson, I would not have touched that contract with Jonah Jackson, but he is a Pro Bowl guard and was a Pro Bowl guard under Ben Johnson. So if you put their right tackle, next to Tony and um, Jonah Jackson, you're looking at potential 3 Pro Bowl linemen for the Bears. And I know we have Hutch, I know we have McNeil and Reader, but it's no longer going to be us bullying them in the trenches. It's going to be a fair, even one-on-one. It's going to be a long game. We're going to Soldier Field, and it's no longer going to be a pushover. So I'm not afraid of the Bears, but it's only the first off, not even halfway through the first offseason of Ben Johnson train, and he's already significantly addressed the biggest areas of need. So kudos to them. That's unfortunate for us, but hopefully we do something to tip the scales in our favor once more.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And we lost you for a minute there. Really, all we talked about was the trades and then Carlton Davis.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention Davis.
That's all right. You can mention him on your next time around.
Yeah.
And we're back.
Yeah.
All right, Brad, I will pass it to you if you have anything to add on the Joe Thuney edition in Chicago.
Yeah, with Tooney, great signing. Great signing. A 1-year deal, though. He's going to be up next year. So if they want to keep it, they're going to have to commit some money to him. Probably, what is he, 32? Probably a couple of years, but it's going to be expensive. You're going to end up paying. But the Bears will be formidable. They will be better. Hard not to be. I think they have a better coach. That's not proven yet. Nothing says Ben Johnson is going to come in and be a great coach. He's got a great resume. There is a difference between a great resume and a great coach. Eberflus was a defensive genius. Matt Nagy worked with Andy Reid. There's more to coaching than the X's and O's. We'll see. I'm not bagging on the guy. It was the right hire. But we expected the Bears to upgrade the offensive line. We knew it was coming. It's Cade. And they will block us better up front, but we do have a guy named Lee McNeil. We do have a guy named Aiden Hutchinson. We do have a guy named Zadarius Smith. Then we have an offensive line. And nobody really stands out, to me at least, in that defensive line other than Montez Sweat. So we've got to understand that it was inevitable that the Bears were going to get better. It just was. They couldn't, it's not that they couldn't be any worse. No, they were going to get better. We know that. We play the toughest division in the NFL. So we are the Detroit Lions. We are 15-2. It's not really, in my opinion, not worried about what somebody else is going to do. It's what we need to do. And injuries hurt us. I don't want to use that as an excuse. It was working all the way up till the end of the year. And I really don't think that it was the injuries that cost us against Washington. Quite frankly, why are you going empty when you're up 17-3 with third and short. Who called that? Just saying. You don't go empty there. He gets too cute. And who's to say all those trick plays were his? I could have sworn Dan Campbell's got a set of balls. So I got to believe Campbell was in on those plays. I'm just saying, it's what we're going to do. All right, Bears, hey, kudos. But hopefully now that Caleb Williams won't hold on to the ball for more than 9 seconds. Literally more than 9 seconds. So this falls on him a little bit too. So let's make sure he's not getting that happy feet the first time the rush comes. So, but no, that's tremendous. Tremendous signing on Thuney, tremendous signing on Jackson. But again, we knew it was coming. I'd like to see what they're going to do on that defensive line. And I'd quite frankly like to see what they're going to do at linebacker. I don't think that defense is formidable. I think it's a run-of-the-mill defense. So, I mean, I don't want to, not trying to piss on the Thuney signing, but it's the Bears and it's the Vikings and it's the Packers. And we see them every year. And as long as we go 6-0 against them last year?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, 5-0, or 5-1, 4-2 would be good. I prefer 6-0 because the schedule is going to be a bitch. So, but yeah, Bears are going to do what they do. They've got a lot of money. So we knew it was coming. Now we just got to do what we do.
Yeah, and that's very true. Speaking to your point of, Montez Sweat being the best player on their defensive line, Zadarius Smith had more sacks than him last year. Just saying. So I'll pass it back to James on that note if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the Carlton Davis thing. As you said, he's not a player that I would want to break the bank on and just give him whatever he wants. However, I don't want to skimp on him either. And uh, obviously, I don't know what the actual offer was, but I agree with what he posted on Twitter. Seems to be displeased with the offer by more than just a little bit. And he was pivotal for this team. He is in my opinion, number one corner. I think Terrion is better suited for the number two. I know Raystraw was making waves in camp before he got hurt, but that's just camp, and he got hurt, so let's see how he bounces back. But we did spend a first and second round pick at the corner position, so I know we already have significant resources put into that. So I don't know what he's asking for, and I really wish I do, and I wish I knew the Lions offer. As you stated, there's some decent corners available in free agency. I don't think we're going to be completely lost, but I would say at least unless someone else gets a surprising cut or a June 1st cut or something, or there's a surprising trade, I do think Carlton Davis is the number one corner in free agency. So I would really like to bring him back, but as we stated on Monday, I'm like, we're also potentially talking about JMO extensions and a couple other guys in Hutch, like you said, a couple other guys in line. And I'm not going to risk those guys for Davis, but I would not want to kick Davis out. I'm not saying like we don't want you because I would love to have him back.
Yeah, and I can completely agree with that point. Like I said, I would love to have him back, but we ain't paying him 25 million a year. You know what I mean? Like we got to
Oh,
be
absolutely.
realistic here with this one. So Brad, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I had a little technical difficulty there. I got a feeling, just me, that they probably offered him 3 years at 18 million. I don't think they went as high as 20, and you'd have to be dumb to give this guy 25 million. Just my opinion. He doesn't move the needle for me. Is he the best corner out there? Maybe, perhaps, but he missed 4 games. My question is we gave up a third for him. Why didn't we make sure we were signing him then? Because the third round pick is pretty damn valuable for a guy on a 1 year. Now look where we're at right now. Okay. I don't think I would have even made the trade without making sure we got him extended. So, but hey, that's just me. I think there's options out there. I love Byron Murphy. I love Pat Jones. I love Shaver. I love everyone that you guys brought up. I really do. But Carlton Davis, you can go to the Jacksonville Jaguars and we'll never hear from you again. You'll have a hell of a mansion out there in North Florida, and you'll have your yachts and all that, and you'll be big pimping, brother. But you ain't gonna have no ring. So you go have fun with the teams that have that cap. You go play for the Patriots. You go play for Jacksonville, and we'll say we knew you win because we will never hear from you again because you will not be on a good football clubs or football team. So, and then what I wanted to say too when I skipped out is, we got to remember Zadarius Smith came over here halfway through the year. All right, so it wasn't like he spent a whole training camp with us. All right, now you're going to get Z-Dog for maybe one more year, so take on the contract, get him in a training camp, get him with Hutch, and boom, all of a sudden, wow, he's got 12, 13 sacks. Definitely need to upgrade the position, though, in the draft. Definitely need to. Or upgrade it, in free agency as well. Khalil Mack, I'll keep pounding the table for him. You go Mack and Smith with a young pup in the third round there all of a sudden, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm feeling real good about that. Yep. So, yeah, gives Zadarius Smith an offseason for crying out loud. And let's see what he can do. This isn't going to be popular. It's not going to be popular at all. But, guys, you can't go spending $40 million on any player outside of a franchise quarterback. You just can't. You're going to be lopsided. And hopefully the cap goes up, and it goes up and up. But, hey, you better sign Hutch tomorrow. All right? Because when I saw Crosby's numbers, I was like, yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. I mean, I had to do a triple take, not a double, a triple. And I'm just going, this is not good. This is so fucking not good. So I'm not paying Hudson $40 million a year. I'm not paying anybody $40 million a year. All right. No, I can't, guys. It's again, man. Again, I want to be in this for the long haul. I don't want a window to close. I want kicks of the can every year. And $40 million wrapped up in one player. Good God. Good God. So, I mean, you guys can both kick me in the nuts. I get it. I know he's a Michigan boy. I know he's a divine child boy. I love it. My daughter's got his jersey. My mom calls me every day, every Sunday. Do you see Hush? You see Hush? She called me crying when he got hurt. I get it. But not at $40 million, fellas. Not at $40 million.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand that. But to kind of like play devil's advocate on those points, I guess. The first thing is Carlton Davis, yes, we traded a third round pick for him. But if he gets 20 million and we don't sign a guy of that much money, we get a third back. So just keep that into account there. Because Brad Holmes might have been thinking that when he made that deal. If we're not going to pay him, we get a comp pick back. Really, we move down like 20 picks to get Carlton Davis, which isn't that bad in hindsight. And then number two, I definitely agree with your Zadarius Smith point. And another thing that I would add on to that is he had 4.5, 5 sacks with us without Hutchinson and without McNeil for 3-4 games. So if he can do that as the number one guy, like you said, 13 sacks really isn't that crazy, right? And that's Josh Sweat's best season as a NFL player. So just put that into perspective. Would you rather pay Josh Sweat 18 million or Zadarius Smith 9 for the same production? Although it's only for one season, some other factors into that. And then the other thing is on the Hutch front, again, to play devil's advocate, I disagree only because that number in 2 years is going to look way better. I think if we give him 40 million, I think it looks bad today. It might even look bad next year, but then that third season, when we're talking about a 5-6 year deal, we're going to be talking about, call me crazy. I think by 2030, we're going to see $100 million a year contract in the NFL. I genuinely do.
Yep.
And I think it'll be a Pat Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, a quarterback, maybe Jaden Daniels, I could see, in 5 years if he's on his going into his third contract. But those are just some things to kind of take into account with that because of the fact that, we do know the cap's going to keep rising and we know that, all these things are going to happen. But with that said, if the cap doesn't rise as much as, projected, or if something weird happens, then you're talking about a whole different scenario there with that Hutch deal. So I totally get where you're coming from because 40 million that's buku bucks, bro. Like that's crazy for a non-quarterback. But think about 5 years ago. 25 million for a non-quarterback. People were like, "What? What is going on?" So I think if just we take into account the future money that could be coming in. I think it'll be okay. But with that being said, we will pivot to our final topic of the day, NFL news in general. So we had a decent amount of NFL news happen. Oh, James, did you have a point?
Yeah, sorry. I just something I feel like got lost in translation a little bit that both of you touched on in terms of the Davis acquisition itself. We got a fourth and a fifth back in that trade as well. Not only did we give up our third, but when we traded for him, he had 2 years on his contract. He took that down to one and restructured his contract for us to have some more cap space for the Panay Sewell deal. And now we are, I'm not we, but now Brad Holmes, and don't get me wrong, I love Brad Holmes. I just hope we didn't offer him, because I don't know what the offer too little, because he has helped us out in the past, and he was supposed to have this upcoming year on his contract originally when we did trade for him.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because also to play devil's advocate, think about it like this, right? I agree with you that I totally forgot about the fourth and the fifth round pick, honestly. But I also forgot about the restructure thing. And I would agree that they should do him a solid because of the restructure. But think about it this way. He had one more year for 16 million, right? So if we're offering him 18, is that really disrespectful if he was going to take 16 to begin with? You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes it's like I kind of get where he's coming from because he played well and the cap is what it is and blah, 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 blah. But if we're using that point, couldn't we kind of turn that on its head and say, well, he's getting extra money at the end of the day then? But again, it's a 3-year deal instead of a one, and other things go into account with that. But anything else by either of you guys?
Well, speaking to that point, that's cool, and I get it, and it's about making your money. Believe me, I don't know, but believe me, I get it. But let me say this: is Kansas City going to offer him 3 at 25? Is Buffalo? You see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
So, do you want to be in? Do you want? He hasn't got. He has a ring with Tampa, right? Correct. Okay, he's got a ring with Tampa.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, fair enough. If one ring is good enough for him, and I'm not saying it's not, okay, then go get yours. Again, you're not going to get it from a contender, though. So if you're ready to get paid, God bless you. Can't keep a guy from his money. Never will. But if you want to win another Super Bowl, you're not going to do it in the places you're going to end up. So.
Yeah, and that's another good point on that front. But to pivot now to the NFL as a whole, just to kind of go through this kind of quickly, Davante Adams was cut. Okay. It sounds like he is probably going to a West Coast team, probably the Chargers or even the Rams. I've heard some inklings that he could go to the Rams to kind of take that Cooper Kupp spot, and he'll obviously take a lot less money than what Kupp is getting paid, or else that would make no sense. I've also heard some AJ Brown rumors of him being traded. I don't think they're that substantial. He seems like this happens every year, but I don't see a team who just gave their running back an extra 10 million for funsies and then gave their linebacker a new deal, just trading their best receiver because of money. Like, I just don't get that. The only thing I could understand is because AJ Brown has had some off-field stuff. He's had some character concerns throughout the process. So I could see them thinking, we'll trade AJ, we'll sign another receiver like a Chris Godwin or something like that to be our, not too much of a talent drop off. Maybe. I don't see it happening though. But speaking of Chris Godwin, he's probably the best receiver available right now, and he is being highly sought after. It does sound like though he will end up in Tampa Bay after all is said and done. However, I don't think it's that crazy if he leaves for New England or Carolina or let's see, the Chargers even. I could see him kind of going to any of those wide receiver needy teams. And then, like I mentioned before, Saquon got a new deal where he is making $20 million a season, which is the first running back contract ever to make over $20 million a year. And that kind of goes into our last point of, the cap keeps going up, man. It's crazy to see the numbers that these guys are getting. But another guy who will probably make a little bit over $20 million a year, this might surprise you, Sam Darnold. From everything I've heard, the Vikings are not willing to pay over $25 million a year. They offered a 1-year deal around that $20 to $25 million range. Sam obviously didn't accept it because he wants to test his market. But that's where the Vikings are at. Sounds like they're not going to budge. They are using JJ McCarthy as leverage, which they should, because they go, well, we're not going to overpay for you. If you don't want to stay, we'll go sign, a middling starter quarterback like a Russell Wilson or something like we mentioned last podcast, something along those lines, and kind of go from there and save us some money. So sounds like if most likely Sam Darnold will not be returning to Minnesota. With that being said, Pittsburgh probably is the best spot for him, I think. Obviously I would have said the Rams before that, but I think Pittsburgh right now, just because I think he fits there pretty well, and I think they would be willing to pay a little bit more right now because of the spot that they're in. Another team that can make sense, of course, is Tennessee or the Jets, or really both New York teams. But I think all three of those are a little bit less going to be less aggressive after that position this year because they're so high in the draft. So we'll see how that ends up. But right now, it does not sound like Sam Darnold is that keen to return to Minnesota. And then we touched on the Joe Thuney to Chicago trade. Speaking of trades, DK Metcalf, he requested a trade, which is pretty big right now for this NFL. He's a legit number one wide receiver. I don't understand people on Twitter are acting like he's some bum. The dude is like, okay, he's not Calvin Johnson, right? But if you
No.
took just Calvin Johnson's height, weight, speed, and that's who DK Metcalf is. I mean, he has all of those tools. You know what I mean? So, and he's 26, 27, and he's only got 1 year on his deal. So whoever trades for him is going to need to sign him to a new deal. But again, we got a pretty deep wide receiver class in terms of free agency and trading this year. At least for those wide receiver 1 or 2, there's a little bit more on the bone there, I think, than normal. So we could see Metcalf go to the Chargers, the Patriots, the Rams, the Panthers, the Steelers, the Packers have been another team linked to him. And the Seahawks just cut Tyler Lockett, so they're really desperately in need of wide receivers. And I could see Green Bay maybe trading Jair Alexander, Christian Watson, in a pick for DK, and then both teams kind of make out on that. But remember, whoever trades for him is going to have to sign a new deal, and that's going to be $25 million probably per year minimum, because right now he's making 18, and that was a deal he signed I think 3 years ago. And then our last trade rumors that we have right now is there are some real rumors of Brandon Aiyuk getting traded. I don't know how substantial they are, though. Again, they just traded Debo. I thought they would only trade one or the other, it seemed like to me. And the rumors are that Aiyuk could be traded to New England for a third rounder. I don't know about that. I feel like he's young. He's not super expensive. I don't really see why the Niners would do that trade right now. And if they were, they should have done it 5 days ago instead of trading Debo. That's just my opinion. But I still think they did the right decision by trading Debo because, you get a little bit more money off the books, and that was kind of the whole idea. And then to wrap this report up, Jonathan Allen from the Washington Commanders is a cut candidate because they're having some trouble finding him a trade, which makes sense. If you're Jonathan Allen, right, let's say there's 3 teams you really want to go to. You've let those teams know. There's no need for them to really trade anything for you because you're on a 1-year, $16 million deal, and they probably could get you for cheaper without having to give up capital. It just they're then risking you basically, or risking Jonathan Allen, because they're saying we feel we can get him over those other 2 guys. So maybe somebody floats a 7th and gets it done, but that's kind of what it seems like it's going to be right now. And then last but not least, which we already touched on this, Max Crosby, the premier pass rusher from the Raiders, just got an absolute blockbuster of a deal. $35.5 million per year, resets the market for everybody, not just pass rushers, if you ask me. That's an insane amount of money. And the Lions, got to stop dragging our toes when it comes to this Aiden Hutchinson deal, because that's just going to keep going up and keep going up, especially if Myles Garrett gets traded. But with that being said, I will pass this over to Brad, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Just rifling through, a couple of things stand out to me. could be wrong, would have to check the cap, but DJ Metcalf goes to Buffalo. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not sure that Buffalo has the cap. I was going to say Baltimore, and he probably would be as well. I don't think Baltimore has the means to do it. Um, Chris Godwin, I'd like to fit in Seattle if he doesn't go to Tampa. Seattle's going to need receivers, but then again, while DK wants out, Locke is long of the two, so possibly there. I like Sam Darnold to the Giants personally. I think that's a fit there. Let's go back to Minnesota. You got JJ there, obviously. If they're not ready to throw him into the deep end of the pool, they did pick up Daniel Jones. Now I'm not mistaken. Is he still on the roster? Oh,
I believe he signed that 1-year contract. Oh,
okay. So if Jones is on that roster, what can Kevin McConnell do with him? Look what he did with Darnold. Imagine what he could do with Daniel Jones. I'm just saying that I think we kind of gloss over that a little bit. I really do. So that could be. I mean, who knows? It might just be me just just blowing air here, but yeah, with anything else, Crosby. I think we talked about that, and I think that's pretty much. Cooper Kupp, I saw him tagged to somebody today too. I'm not sure, but San Francisco, if they want to start selling off their pieces, I mean, Brock Purdy. I'm not sure Brock Purdy can do it all by himself. I'll leave it at that. So if you want to throw to George Kittle 40 times a game, go for it. But that's pretty much all I got on that.
All right. Thanks for the information on that, Brad. I will pass it over to you, James. Floor's yours.
I got a few things to unwrap with that, but I was checking some notes here as you were talking. The Buffalo Bills, I absolutely love that fit. Josh Allen's arm with DK's size, speed, athleticism, all that would be fun to watch, and I would like watching that even not even as a Buffalo fan. However, they only have under 10 million in cap space, so I highly doubt unless they make a couple moves, but they just don't have the room. I know the other team you mentioned was the Ravens. They have only 18 million in cap space, and I know they have a couple guys of their own they want to bring back, so it's going to be less than that for him. So unless they do something to adjust, because I have a strong hunch DK's next contract he's going to be. I have NFL wide receiver contracts in front of me right now, and judging by the market and whatnot, he's probably going to get 29 to 30 million a year, I think, on the market. So I know kind of encompassing everything we've talked about cap space wise between not wanting to pay or potentially not wanting to pay Hutchinson 40 million a year, um, between Max Crosby getting his 35 million a year, 35.5 million a year. It reminds me of when we signed St. Brown. Like, I absolutely love St. Brown. He encompasses everything you want as a teammate, as a person, as a player. He's got his teammates' backs. He does so much charity work. He blocks and he does all the little things you need. But I was kind of against paying a receiver 30 million a year for kind of the same reasons. Like, there's 5, potentially 6 of them per team. You can't the cap keeps going up, yeah, but so do all these quarterback contracts and everyone else. But we made last offseason Amon-Ra St. Brown the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And we are less than a calendar year later, and he is right now the 4th highest paid receiver because 3 people already passed him. And I know Brad was saying no one besides a quarterback's worth 40 million a year, but I absolutely agree with Jace that now Justin Jefferson's the highest paid wide receiver at 35 a year. So Crosby did 35 and a half to leapfrog him for the highest non-quarterback. But we gave St. Brown 30 million a year, and the same offseason it already jumped up to 35. So I can absolutely see a quarterback within the next 6-7 years getting 100 per year as long as things keep rolling the way they are. I think that's outrageous, but that's just the trend it's going in. So yeah, I would like to assign Hutch yesterday, and that way when other pass rushers like Garrett and all these other guys then Hutch is the new benchmark, so then Garrett will pass him. And as Jay said earlier, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, it looks like a steal as long as we get him for enough years. I know it's cringeworthy and you grit your teeth and you're like, I don't know, but the player, someone's paying them that money. So I want it to be us. And then I know you touched up on Brendan Aiyuk, and I just wanted to say, since I have the things in front of me, Aiyuk just signed his extension last offseason as well. He's 27, and he's also making 30 million a year. He is the sixth highest paid receiver in the NFL. So I don't think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's the sixth best player in the league or receiver in the league. Um, AJ Brown, also, what you talked about with potential trade rumors, he's the third highest paid receiver in the league at 32 million a year. So there's multiple expensive receivers. I'll just put an air quotes on the market because I don't think AJ Brown's going anywhere. He just signed his extension. He's making more than St. Brown. But I do wonder, because I'm not the strongest in cap space knowledge, I do wonder how the Eagles make it work with paying AJ Brown 32 a year. They just gave Saquon the first ever running back over 20 million a year. And Davante Smith is the 11th highest paid receiver at 25 million a year. So the Philly has two receivers both making over 25 a year, and now a running back making over 20 a year. So eventually, especially with Jalen Carter, eventually going to need an extension. They just re-signed Brown, their linebacker, today to a big extension. I want to know how they get this money and how we can apply it to ourselves or the Lions, I should say. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's some really good information. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
no, you're good.
Okay. So yeah, that's really good information. And a couple things with what you said. The Bills actually could make it work. I just was looking over their over the cap. If they cut guys post June 1, they can cut Von Miller and free up 18 million right there. They can cut Daquan Jones and free up 5.5. They can cut Connor McGovern and free up 7. They can cut AJ Epinesa and free up 6.5. David Edwards free up 4. So obviously some of those guys are, more starter level players for them, so they won't cut them. But within 4 or 5 players, they're making, another 30 million. So if they wanted to make that happen, they could do it. And they could even, I don't know, maybe trade some players or whatever to try to keep their draft picks. And then another thing I wanted to mention was we do not talk about Penei Sewell enough. Okay.
Yep.
Penei Sewell took a discount. I don't know if anybody knew this or not. He took a hometown discount for the Lions. He gets paid less than Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they got paid at the same time. He is the third highest paid right tackle, I think, right now in the NFL. And when he got his deal, he was second by like $1.5 million behind I'm blanking on his name, but the Buccaneers tackle, Trent Wirfs.
Yep.
He Sewell took a legit hometown discount. Now it might have been 2 or 3 million a year, but he did it, and I just think he doesn't get enough, credit in my opinion for that. Now the other thing I was going to talk about is the cap space thing because I hear this question a lot, and it's something I recently have been able to completely understand. Well, not completely. There's still some stuff I don't really understand about the cap, but in layman's terms, which is the way I understand it. So, in layman's terms, the cap is like how much your roster gets paid every year, obviously. But you can do stuff with bonuses outside of the cap. Like you see it all the time, a player, let's just say, for instance, they got $100 million, right? But 30 million of it was in a bonus. So their cap hit, let's say it's a, 4-year deal. So it's normally 25 million. Let's say, their cap hit is 19 or 18 because of those bonuses. That's generally how they make it work, like with the Saints, how they've been kind of gaming the cap recently, or like the Eagles. It's all about structuring, and this is kind of something I talked about recently on Twitter. It's a lot of it is cash poor owners and cash rich owners, right? So you have owners like, for instance, the Bengals, who are more of a cash poor owner, and then you have owners like the Cowboys, who are a cash rich owner. The Cowboys, what they can do is they can say, hey, like they did the other day, CeeDee Lamb, you're making 35 million or whatever, 32 million this year. How about we give you 20 of that up front? Sound good? And then he goes, sure. And then they go, cool, your cap hit's $12 million now. You see what I'm saying? So it's the Eagles kind of did that when they gave out their deals, like with Saquon and with the linebacker, and then back when they did the deal with Davante and the deal with AJ, they purposely structured that way because their owner has some money he can dole out, and he knew that was going to be how. Okay, it's kind of like baseball in a way because baseball doesn't have a cap, right? Or if it does, it's kind of up in the air. Or how to
It's
yeah.
not a hard cap.
So it's kind of like baseball in that way of like the richest owners could have the best teams if they really wanted to. A lot of these guys are just stingy and they don't want to get pony up the big money, so they just kind of do what they need to do. But with that being said, Brad, do you have anything to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, these numbers, and I'm not trying to get off my lawn guy, but these numbers, good God, man, good God,
Yeah.
I just, oh wow. You guys ever have kids, man? Put them on the gridiron right away and start filling them full of PEDs. Jesus. Maybe with Penei Sewell's if you're asking about the best here, Penei Sewell is the best football player in the NFL. All right. I mean, is he scoring? Well, he can pass too, but is he scoring touchdowns? Is he doing that? No. But football player, he's the best football player in the NFL. And we've got him on a steal. And, back to Hutch with the bonuses and things like that. Like I said, Michigan guy, Divine Child guy, Lions fan. If we could hook him up with a bonus, I think maybe he would take one or two. Now, I can't speak for him. It's the guy's paycheck. All right. But maybe $2-3 million less. Maybe not. Probably not. But it's still there. It definitely would help. But I liked what you talked about with the bonuses. But man, yeah, I just can't with this salary cap stuff. I'm just shaking my damn head, man. It's just I don't know. But yeah, Penei Sewell. Yeah, there's going to be a statue erected after him very soon the day he retires from here.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. Well, that'll wrap up the show this time. We appreciate you guys for watching. James and Brad, I appreciate you guys for being here. You know what to do. Follow us on Twitter. I am at MI Sports Media. James, what's your handle?
Gullet_James.
And Brad?
BTA ball.
Beautiful. Follow me at Jace O Sweet, and we'll see you on the next one. See ya.